You may ask, how did this tradition get started? I'll tell you. I don't know. But it's a tradition. And because of our traditions, every one of us knows who he is and what God expects him to do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Torah. I am Rabbi Tzvi Jacobson with NRM Streamcast, and we'll spend our time talking Torah, learning stuff, and having fun while we learn. You can always send your questions and comments to our mailbag at letstalktorah@gmail.com. And, of course, I will answer as many as I can. Or, better, you can go to our webpage at letstalktorah.net. That's letstalktorah.net. The archives, the old shows, the new shows, questions, comments, anything you wish, as long as it's nice. We even sometimes have people join our show, and they left us nice messages on that page. So really check out the page. And, of course, the all-important donate button is there, which, of course, we ask you to go to. Hit that button. Now, hitting that button doesn't mean you donated. You have to hit the button and fill out the information. And if you would like it for any special occasion, we can announce it. If you don't want it announced, you want to keep it anonymous, we're good with that too. And we are top 10 in Feed Spot's 10 best Jewish book podcasts today, and we are at number 5. You know, there's a heat wave going on outside. I don't know if you got out today. My car said it's 27 degrees, which is almost 30 degrees warmer than it was yesterday and the day before, especially when my wife takes one of the cars, drives to Target, comes back to the car, and it is dead. Very wonderful Jewish organization here in town. They came to try to give it a boost. It was not boosting. I mean, I came out because this Target closed. She can't be out there in the cold weather. That's ridiculous. We called a tow truck. It was going to take too long, so we just waited till the next day. By the way, good idea to know. If you ever schedule with your whichever service you use in this kind of weather to get a tow truck, and you have to be in the area officially, just make the appointment early, because they're not coming. I mean, they try, but they're not coming in an hour and a half or 2 hours. We waited 3 hours, but we didn't wait. I was at work. My wife was home. She calls me up, says they're going to be there during your lunch hour. I said, great, I'm there. I showed up at 12. The guy came, nicest person, towed the car. Sure enough, dead battery, dead. So time for new battery. Car is working beautiful, except I don't know why this is. When you bring your car to the mechanic and they fix it, somehow when you leave the mechanic, something else goes wrong. So the blower is not working. And if you don't know what that means that no heat is going into the car, and it's cold outside. We're all working on these different technicalities, and hopefully that will be fixed by next week when he gets the part in. Anyways, so we're in Egypt. The Jewish people are in Egypt. We're ready for the book of Exodus, the creation of the Jewish nation. Till now, we had the forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We had the 12 tribes and Joseph and his sons. But now, the Jewish people are beginning. As for God to give the Torah, it's going to be to a nation, not to a couple individuals. And that's the end goal. And it starts out, we're slaves. Why was it necessary for the Jewish people to start out as slaves? There's multiple reasons, but the simplest reason is we needed to learn the concept of being subservient. You're subservient first to the Egyptians. God will come and take you out. Now you're ready to be subservient, to serve God. Now, at the same time, we're not wimps. The Jewish people are known as a stiff-necked people. We'll see throughout these Torah portions in Exodus, we do not follow Moses blindly. Not only that, people are forever complaining and starting up with Moses and questioning his authority. Nothing comes simple. Not for Moses. He probably knew that when he took the job, and he didn't want to take the job, but God made him take the job, which is almost the people you want, right? Who's the guy you want or the lady you want running the program? Not the guy who says, please pick me. You want the person who doesn't want the job. They'll do the best job. So let's take it slow. Slow, let's see what happens. We didn't even say how we became slaves. So Jacob and the 70 souls come down to Egypt, and Joseph takes care of us. And slowly the Jewish people start, it wasn't so slowly, but we start to multiply. And as we're multiplying, in the meanwhile, obviously everyone's getting older. Jacob will pass away. Joseph will pass away. The 12 tribes will pass away. And even the 70 souls, except for maybe Yocheved and Sarpas Asher, also pass away. We start moving out of Goshen. We start to mix with the Egyptians. And this is historical. Every time the Jewish people seem to go out and mix to try to become like the nations of the world, God makes them hate us. It's unbelievable. We try to mix. God says they're going to hate you and they're going to persecute you to make sure that you do not become part of the nations. Happened in Spain, happened in Germany, happened in Israel with the Greeks. I mean, it just over and over and over again. But this is the first time where we start to act like the Egyptians. We want to become like the Egyptians. Now, not totally. It is interesting. As much as we want to become like the Egyptians, the Talmud tells us we didn't change our language, our names, and our mode of dress. So basically, you're walking into a non-kosher restaurant, and you're going to see 4 guys sitting there munching on their non-kosher hamburgers, talking in Yiddish, dressed Jewish, with Jewish names, but they want to hang out with the non-Jews. They want to become non-Jewish, except for these couple of things. So we were definitely noticeable and recognizable. So the Pharaoh, he wants to get rid of the Jewish people. Now, he can't just start killing everybody. It doesn't work that way. First, you got to turn them into furniture. You got to make the Jewish people like your cows or like your sheep. And then the world won't complain when you try to kill them. So the first question you have to wonder is, like, Joseph was second in command for a long period of time, right? He goes down to Egypt and he takes over at the age of, let's figure it out, right? He's 17 when he goes down to Egypt. He's in jail for 12 years. So he's 29, 30. He dies at 110. So basically, Joseph rules Egypt for 80 years, right? He turned Egypt into a world power, and I don't think anybody questioned that fact. I think it was pretty clear that Joseph has made Egypt into a world power. Now, even if you want to say the common folk, your regular people, don't know all their history, but the Pharaoh, any king, any ruler of a nation must know his nation's history. So how far removed at this point in the story, even if you want to say, I need to start doing the math. So 86 years before we left Egypt is when the hard labor will begin. We're in Egypt for 210 years. So let's just add 86, and 80 is 160. So you're talking a 50-year window, and all of a sudden, no one remembers Joseph? Like, how, where's your lack of gratitude? How could you not recognize? You want to start with the Jewish people who made your country what it is? But so is human nature. If it's not convenient, if it's not going to help me, I can forget anything. So it actually becomes a 3-part plan. It's a 3-part plan. First, the Pharaoh will trick us into slavery. Now, the verse itself just says he he made officers of taxes. So you could just look at the verse and say that he started demanding, ridiculous amounts of taxes, which may have just been to make bricks. And then he just took everybody over and it was forced labor. However, the Medrash says that they announced, Build Your Country Day. And again, something that the Jewish people is known for is any country we move into, we have to show off that we're the best citizens. We're the best Americans, we're the best Germans, we're the best Spaniards, we're the best Greeks, it doesn't matter. Build Your Country Day, who do you think is going to be at the front of the line? I'm telling you this with everything. We just had Martin Luther King Day. Who do you think is in the pictures marching with Martin Luther King Jr.? Who do you think is there? The Jews. Did it help? Of course it doesn't help. But that's not the point. The point is that we go out there, Pharaoh says, okay, everyone's going to make bricks, we're going to build, and while the Jews are all excited and gung-ho to go ahead and help build your country day, the Egyptians were taking notes. Right? How many bricks can that guy do? How many bricks is he doing? And whatever your quota, whatever you accomplished became your daily quota. And they did it a second day, and slowly but surely the Egyptians stop, and the Jewish people are smart. Took us a few more days to figure it out. And when we're ready to start, out come the soldiers, out come the whips. Now you're slaves. Now we know what you can do. Now you're going to continue this work. Interesting enough, one tribe was not involved. That was the Levite tribe. They were not involved for two reasons. Number one, they themselves didn't want to go work. They said, we're studying Torah, we're not going to work. It's not happening. And it was already set up in the culture of Egypt, from Joseph, by the way, that your clergy are supported by the government, by the populace. They're supported. So it's understood they don't work. Everybody has to have some group of people that's their holy people, that's who takes care of the religion. So either because they didn't do any work or because it was understood in the culture, the Levites will not work. What's interesting is, but Pharaoh is only going to feed the slaves. Your slaves you have to feed. The Levites are not working, I'm not feeding you. It's your problem. So Rabbi Lapian says that the Jewish people every day took a collection of the meager food that they received, their meager portions. They had a collection to send it off to the Levites to make sure they had something to eat as well. So the concept of tithing was understood early on in our creation as a nation. Now, there's a few parts to the plan of turning us into slaves. If you turn us into slaves, so then eventually you can start killing us, and who's going to complain? Because a slave has no value, right? Everybody knows what slaves were like in America. Forget voting. No one believes you. In court, you have no value. You're like the furniture. You're like the cows. I want to kill my cow. I kill my cow. I want to kill my slave. Who's stopping me? So, but there were other parts to that plan. Another part of the plan was that the Pharaoh assumed that they'll work so hard as slaves, there won't be any children. They'll just be so overworked, they won't want to continue with life. They won't want to be married. They won't want to have kids. It actually says in the merit of the righteous women, it was the women that went out to their husbands in the fields and said, you gotta stay married. Look how pretty I am. Look how gorgeous I am. Don't you want to hang out with me? It was the righteous women that kept the Jewish people going. So the plan failed miserably. It doesn't mean the Pharaoh says, okay, well, making them into slaves didn't work, so might as well try something else. Like, they don't have to be slaves anymore. No. I got millions of slaves. I'm going to keep my slaves. But that plan didn't work. We need another plan. So plan two was the midwives had to kill the babies. If it was a boy being born, they had to kill him. How could you do such a thing? I mean, you would like to say normal people can't do such a thing. But if you believe in abortion and the Pharaoh's going to kill the midwife if she doesn't kill the baby, why can't you understand such a thing? But these midwives, Moses' mother, Yocheved, his sister Miriam, they're the head midwives, did just the opposite. They prayed the baby should live. They helped the babies. They made sure to feed them, made sure to clothe them. They did whatever they could in their power, and they were successful. They didn't listen to Pharaoh. Now, the Pharaoh's not going to like this. When he sees after a while it's not working, he's going to call them to task. He calls them in. So the midwife said, Pharaoh, these Jewish ladies, first of all, they heard your plan. They don't call us. And second of all, they're like animals. They don't need midwives, right? If you're in the wild, right, the lion, the tiger, the bear, they don't have to go to a hospital to give birth, right? They can do quite fine by themselves. So they don't need us. So your plan has been a failure. There's a medrash that Pharaoh tried to kill them, and they had to hide, or they got swallowed up by the wolves, whatever it was. It could be Pharaoh threw them in jail. There's different versions of what happened, but in the end, plan 2 failed miserably as well. Plan 3, well, I just wanted to back up on one thing. The question is, how did they have the wherewithal to not kill the babies? So you would think the verse would say they were great women, they were righteous women, they were caring, they were concerned, they didn't like bloodshed. The verse says they feared God. As the only way it was possible that these midwives would not kill the babies was because they feared God. If fear of God comes first, then they have the ability to not kill the babies. But if there's no fear of God, it's impossible. There's no way that they won't, why shouldn't they kill the babies? So totally because they feared God. So that was plan 2. And again, plan 2, for as far as Pharaoh is concerned, failed. Problem now is that Pharaoh's astrologers are telling him that the Mashiach Shel Yisrael, the savior of the Jewish people, is about to be born, is going to be born, soon to be born. Astrology, for those who know astrology, it is not an exact science. Whereas the stars do tell people messages if you know how to read them, but it's very blurry. So the message is unclear. For example, the astrologers told Pharaoh, we see their savior is going to be born. But we don't know if he's going to be an Egyptian or if he's Jewish. We don't know. Now, why couldn't they tell? Because Moses obviously is born to Yocheved, he's Jewish, but he was raised in Pharaoh's palace. So we don't know. At least when you look at the stars, is he Jewish or Egyptian? So Pharaoh doesn't care. Kill all the babies. Kill the Jewish babies, kill the Egyptian babies, no problem. How should we kill the babies? So it is fascinating. And as they understood, the Egyptians, Pharaoh understood how God works. It's not they don't believe in God. They know all about God. They know exactly how he works. They know all this stuff about the Jewish people. They know. And they also think they know how to outsmart God. Why do they think they can outsmart God? Well, they knew, again, I don't know how they knew, but they knew. They knew that God punishes measure for measure. It's the punishment has to fit the crime. There has to be a connection. So Pharaoh's advisor said to him, if we drown the babies, what's the punishment? What should be the punishment for drowning? Drowning. How's God going to punish the whole Egypt? He'll have to bring a flood. Oh, God told Noah, no more flooding the world. So Egypt is safe because God only punishes measure for measure. He doesn't get to use another way of destruction, and God won't be able to punish us. What happened? Right? In the end, God gets the last laugh. Right? That's what Jethro was amazed about, because he was in on that meeting, and he couldn't understand, how is God going to punish Egypt? So God splits the Red Sea. The Egyptian army, Pharaoh included, walk right in. God didn't bring a flood, but he did punish with drowning. So it's amazing. Right? God went ahead, and he was, because no problem for God. God has patience, right? They want to outsmart God. You can't outsmart God. It just doesn't work. But everybody tries to outsmart God because the leader of the Jewish people is Amram, is Moses' father. He also, I don't want to say he's outsmarting God, but he himself is frustrated. And as once they're throwing the babies in the river, so Amram says, this suffering that the Jewish people is going through is so intense, we can't handle it. I'm going to force God's hand. I'm going to separate from my wife. I'm the leader of the Jewish people. If I separate, everybody separates. If we all separate, no more children, no more children, no more Jewish nation. God will have to take us out of Egypt. Also sounds like a good plan. Also sounds like a plan that he's trying to outsmart God. The difference is that when Amram gets the message that this is not how we act, so he remarries Yocheved. What was the message? His 5-year-old daughter, Miriam, says to her father, you're worse than Pharaoh. You have to imagine the scene, right? You have a 5-year-old little girl telling the greatest rabbi of the time, the Jewish leader, that he's worse than Pharaoh. Now, normally you say, little girl, here's a candy and go away. Well, you don't pay attention to her. She says, Pharaoh's decree is on the boys. Your decree is on everybody. Pharaoh's decree, maybe God will listen, maybe God won't listen. The truth is that there were miracles going on. Even when the babies were thrown into the river, angels came, took the babies out on the other side of the river and fed them and took care of them. So the decree didn't even work anyways. I don't know who knew what was going on, but Miriam says, Pharaoh's decree, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. But your decree, your decree for sure, because you're not going to be married. And she said, if you get back remarried, the Mashiach Yisrael, the Savior of the Jewish people, will come from you. And Amram listens. And they actually make a whole big wedding to show everybody, change your plan. Original plan of not being married, bad idea. Changing, not doing it. And the Egyptians are busy keeping track when people get married because they're going to search the homes after 9 months to see if there's any babies there. So Moses happens to be born 3 months early. So they have 3 months of Moses in the house as the house lit up. His soul was a special soul. But after 3 months, what are you going to do? After 3 months, we can't keep him here. So they make a little box, and they put clay on the inside and tar on the outside. And Amram says to his daughter on the way out the door, when they're going to put Moses in the river, what's with your prophecy? You said that that this will bring the Mashiach, and then you see we have to put him in the river. He's going to die. So Miriam, who knew she had said a prophecy, she said, hey, I got to find out what's going on over here. Like, come on. Like, God's going to do a miracle. And this is where we get into, as we say, God's sense of humor. I say it over a lot because I find it to be very fascinating. Because Pharaoh's, all his plans were wrapped around making sure the Savior of the Jewish people dies. Who is going to raise and protect the Savior of the Jewish people? The same Pharaoh. So on one extreme, he makes a decree to kill all the babies. And on the other side of the coin, he saves that child. And that child had to be raised in his house. Because the Jewish people cannot be led by a slave. The slave mentality would not allow someone to be a leader. We need Moses raised in Pharaoh's house, in the palace, so he's brought up as a prince. That kind of leadership we can have. So Moses' basket is put in the river, and along comes the daughter of Pharaoh, and she sees the basket, whether she sends a maid